The February wind howled through the narrow spaces between abandoned houses, carrying crystals of ice that stung like needles against exposed skin. Officer Marcus Reed pulled his jacket tighter around his neck, his breath forming thick white clouds in the pre-dawn darkness that blanketed the empty streets. Beside him, Valor pressed closer, the retired German shepherd's powerful body radiating warmth against Marcus's leg, the dog's ears constantly swiveling and adjusting to catch every sound that echoed through the condemned neighborhood. Marcus checked his watch for the third time in as many minutes. 5:47 in the morning. In 13 minutes, the sun would begin its slow climb above the horizon, painting the snow-covered streets in shades of gray and rose gold. He'd been making this same walk for 2 years now, ever since forced retirement, ever since the department decided that a 53-year-old officer and his 9-year-old K-9 partner were better suited for pension checks than active duty. But they'd been wrong about the aging part. Dead wrong. At 9 years old, Valor moved with the same controlled power, the same fluid grace he'd displayed at 4, when Marcus had first brought him home from the elite K-9 training facility in Virginia Beach. German shepherds could work until 10, sometimes 11 if they stayed fit and healthy. Valor was both. His dark coat gleamed with good health, his muscles rippled beneath his fur with every step, and his eyes held that sharp, intelligent focus that had made him one of the best tracking dogs in the state. But new department policies didn't care about individual capability. They cared about insurance premiums and liability concerns and actuarial tables that said dogs over 8 were retirement candidates. Easier to push out the experienced teams and bring in younger dogs with cheaper insurance rates. Marcus tried not to be bitter about it. Tried and mostly failed, especially on mornings like this when Valor demonstrated exactly how much working ability he still possessed. The condemned neighborhood stretched 3 blocks in every direction from where Marcus stood, a grid of empty houses with boarded windows and snow-covered yards where grass hadn't successfully grown in years. The city had marked the entire area for demolition 6 months ago, citing structural instability and ground contamination from an old chemical processing plant that had operated here throughout the 1970s. Chain-link fences with orange demolition notices blocked the main entrances. No one was supposed to be here, not legally, anyway. But Marcus had learned over 2 decades of police work that what was supposed to be and what actually was rarely aligned. The temperature gauge on his phone read 18 degrees. With the wind that cut through the streets like razor blades, the effective temperature was probably closer to 5. The kind of cold that burned exposed skin within 3 minutes, that turned the moisture in your lungs to ice crystals with each breath, that could kill a person in less than an hour if they couldn't find shelter. Marcus had been making his regular morning constitutional through these condemned blocks, partly for exercise, partly to keep an eye on the empty houses that sometimes attracted squatters or teenage vandals. 3 houses from the end of Maple Street, Valor suddenly stopped walking, his entire body going rigid in the posture Marcus knew as well as his own heartbeat. The dog's head lifted high, nostrils flaring wide in the cold air, pulling in scent molecules in short, sharp bursts. His ears pointed forward, locked on something Marcus's inferior human senses couldn't detect. The behavior was unmistakable to anyone who'd worked with tracking dogs. 7 years together on the force, working searches that ranged from missing hikers in state forests to escaped prisoners hiding in urban environments, had taught Marcus to read every subtle shift in his partner's body language. This was an alert. A serious one. Marcus scanned the street ahead with the eyes of a cop who'd spent 25 years learning to notice what didn't belong. Nothing moved in the pre-dawn gloom. The houses stood silent, their gutters hanging at angles where time and weather had torn them loose, their foundations cracked and listing where the contaminated ground had shifted beneath them. Snow had drifted against doors that would never open again, piling in the corners where children had once built snowmen and thrown snowballs. Valor pulled forward, and Marcus felt the quality of that pull. not the excited tugging of a pet chasing a squirrel or investigating an interesting scent left by a passing raccoon. This was the steady, purposeful pull that Marcus remembered from hundreds of searches, hundreds of missions where human lives hung in the balance, and a dog's nose was the difference between rescue and tragedy. The dog's paws left deep, clear impressions in the 8 inches of powder that had fallen overnight, his stride lengthening as whatever scent he'd caught grew stronger, more compelling. He moved with absolute purpose toward the alley between 2 houses that looked ready to collapse at any moment. Marcus's hand moved toward his phone, fingers closing around it in his jacket pocket. Standard procedure said he should call this in, report suspicious activity in a condemned area. Let active duty officers handle it. He wasn't a cop anymore. He had no authority, no jurisdiction, no backup. Then he remembered the last time he'd tried calling the department. 3 months ago. Valor had alerted to smoke coming from one of these abandoned structures, and Marcus had been certain someone was squatting inside, possibly starting fires for warmth in a building with exposed wiring and collapsed chimneys. He'd called it in as a potential safety hazard, waited in the cold for a patrol unit to arrive. 40 minutes later, 2 officers finally showed up. Young guys Marcus didn't recognize, couldn't have been on the force more than a year or 2. They'd walked through the house, found nothing but empty rooms and snow blown in through broken windows, then came back out shaking their heads. Told Marcus he was imagining things, suggested maybe it was time to fully accept retirement. Stop playing cop. One of them had looked at Valor and made a comment about old dogs and new tricks, laughed at his own joke while his partner smirked. Marcus had stopped calling after that, stopped trying to prove he and Valor were still valuable. If the department wanted to waste experienced resources, that was their choice. He had better things to do than beg for validation from kids half his age who'd never worked a real search in their lives. So when Valor pulled insistently toward the dark alley between 2 sagging houses that looked like strong wind might knock them over, Marcus made a decision. He checked to make sure his old police flashlight still worked, confirmed his phone had full battery and a signal, and followed his partner into the shadows. If Valor was wrong, if this was nothing, no one would ever know Marcus had been foolish enough to investigate alone. If his partner was right, if there was actually something here, Marcus could call for help with evidence to support the call. The alley was barely wide enough for a grown man to walk through with arms extended to full width. Valor moved through it like he'd been designed specifically for tight spaces, his body low to the ground in proper tracking posture. Following something, Marcus's limited human nose had no chance of detecting. The walls of the houses rose on either side, close enough that Marcus could extend his arms and touch both simultaneously. Snow had drifted here in complex patterns, creating small caves and hollows where the foundations met the frozen ground. The kind of places where homeless people sometimes tried to shelter when winter hit with killing force. The kind of places where you could hide things you desperately didn't want found. The smell hit Marcus halfway down the alley. Urine, fresh, recent, human. His cop instincts, dormant but not dead, came flooding back. Someone had been here, recently, in the last few hours. Then Valor stopped moving forward and sat down hard, the formal alert position he'd been trained to use when he found what he was searching for. His tail didn't wag. His ears stayed forward, focused. This was work, not play. Marcus moved closer, pulling out his flashlight with hands that had started to shake, though not from the cold. In the harsh LED beam, he saw what had made his partner alert. 2 small figures huddled together against the wall where the houses nearly touched, partially hidden by a snowdrift that had formed during the night. Marcus's breath caught in his throat, his heart seeming to stop mid-beat. Children. A boy and a girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old at most, wearing nothing but thin cotton pajamas decorated with cartoon characters. Their hands were bound behind their backs with yellow nylon rope, the kind you could buy at any hardware store. More rope wrapped around their small ankles. They'd been positioned sitting back to back, and the rope had been wound around both of them together in a cruel parody of a hug, securing them to an old corroded drain pipe that ran down the wall. The little girl's lips had turned blue. Neither child was shivering anymore, and Marcus knew from his years of emergency response training exactly what that meant. Hypothermia. Advanced stage. Their bodies had exhausted all energy trying to generate heat. They'd moved past the shivering phase into the deadly stillness that preceded organ failure and death. They were dying. Right here, right now in front of him, maybe minutes away from the point of no return. "Oh God," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. "Oh God, no, Valor, stay. Good boy, stay." He dropped to his knees in the snow, ignoring the cold wetness soaking through his jeans. His fingers, already stiff from the temperature, fumbled with the first knot binding the little girl's wrists. The rope was frozen solid, ice crystals making it as rigid as steel cable. He tried to work his fingernails under the binding, tried to find purchase on the knot. It wouldn't budge, not even a millimeter. Whoever had tied these children knew exactly what they were doing. The knots were professional, tight, designed not to slip. Marcus moved to the ankle restraints, hoping for better luck. Same problem. Same frozen rope, same impossibly tight knots. His hands shook as he worked, both from cold and from rage and from the terrible fear that he'd found these children too late, that they would die here while he knelt helpless beside them. The little boy's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, glassy. His lips barely moved. "Cold," he whispered, the single word taking tremendous effort. "I know, buddy. I know you're cold. I'm going to get you out, I promise. I'm going to get both of you out." Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket, fingers almost too numb to work the touchscreen. He dialed 911, put the phone to his ear. Nothing. No ring, no connection. He pulled the phone away, checked the signal. 0 bars. Dead zone. Of course it was a dead zone. These houses were scheduled for demolition partly because the city had let all infrastructure fail. No maintained phone lines, no cell towers prioritizing coverage for an area marked for destruction. He was on his own. Marcus stood, looking around frantically for anything that might help. A piece of glass to cut the rope, a sharp edge, anything. The alley held nothing but snow and shadows and 2 children who were running out of time. Valor whined, a sound of distress Marcus had rarely heard from his partner. The dog pushed past Marcus to the children, pressing his warm body against the little girl's side, trying to share his heat. She didn't react. Her skin looked waxy, pale with a bluish tint spreading around her mouth and fingernails. Marcus had seen hypothermia victims before. This was bad. This was critical. "Think," he muttered, forcing his panicked mind to work like the trained officer he'd been. "Think, Reed, think!" Valor barked once, sharp and commanding. The same bark he used during searches when he'd found something critical and needed his handler's immediate attention. Marcus looked at the dog, then at what Valor was looking at. The drain pipe. Old, corroded by decades of exposure to weather and chemicals leaching from the contaminated ground. The kind that might break if enough force was applied. It was a chance, maybe the only one these children had. Marcus wrapped both hands around the pipe where it connected to the wall, his fingers screaming protest at gripping the frozen metal. He pulled. Nothing happened. The pipe held firm, anchored by decades-old fasteners. He repositioned his grip, braced his foot against the crumbling wall, and pulled harder. The metal creaked, a sound like old bones breaking, but the pipe stayed attached. "Come on," Marcus growled through gritted teeth. "Come on." He threw his full weight backward, every muscle in his back and arms straining. The pipe groaned, shifted slightly in its moorings. Marcus pulled again, harder, desperation giving him strength he didn't know he still possessed. The fasteners began to tear free from the decaying wall. One more pull, one more try. With a crack like a gunshot, the pipe broke free, pulling chunks of rotten wood and crumbling mortar with it. The children toppled, sideways into the snow, still bound together but no longer anchored to the wall. Marcus didn't waste time celebrating the small victory. He gathered the children up, one small body tucked under each arm. They weighed almost nothing, terrifyingly light, like frozen dolls instead of living children. The little boy's head lolled against Marcus's shoulder, no muscle tone, no resistance. The girl didn't move at all. "Stay with me," Marcus pleaded as he started running, his boots slipping on ice. "Both of you, stay with me. Don't you dare quit. Don't you dare." Valor ran ahead, breaking trail through the deepest snowdrifts, his powerful legs churning through powder that came up to his chest in places. The dog knew where they were going. Home. Warmth. Help. Marcus ran as fast as he dared with his precious cargo, his lungs burning from the cold air, his arms starting to shake from effort and fear. He couldn't tell if the children were breathing. Their skin felt like ice against his neck where their heads rested. 3 blocks to his house. Just 3 blocks, but each one felt like a mile. He stumbled over a hidden curb buried in snow, nearly fell, caught himself at the last second. The children bounced in his arms but didn't cry out, didn't react. That absence of response terrified him more than screaming would have. Valor reached the main road first, standing in the middle of the plowed street, barking continuously. A car approached, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. The vehicle slowed, and Marcus saw the driver's eyes go wide with shock at the scene, at a man running with 2 small children, at a dog barking urgently in the street. "Call 911!" Marcus shouted, his voice hoarse. "Children, hypothermia. Tell them to send ambulances to 2247 Oak Street, now." The driver grabbed his phone. Marcus heard him already talking to a dispatcher as the car pulled to the curb. But Marcus didn't stop running. Couldn't stop. Every second mattered. 2 more blocks, just 2 more. His house appeared ahead, the lights he'd left on making it look warm and welcoming. Marcus kicked the front door open hard enough to crack the frame, carried the children straight to the living room. He'd left his fireplace burning low when he left for his walk, and now he blessed that habit. Warmth. Not too much, not too fast, but enough. He laid the children on the rug in front of the fireplace, positioning them carefully. Valor was already there, and Marcus watched in amazement as his partner positioned himself between the children and the direct heat source, his body blocking them from warming too rapidly. Smart dog. Brilliant dog. Warming too quickly after severe hypothermia could send their hearts into arrhythmia, could kill them as surely as the cold. Marcus grabbed every blanket he owned, stripped them from beds and closets, wrapped the children in layers. The little boy's eyes were closed now, his breathing so shallow Marcus couldn't see his chest move. The girl hadn't moved at all since he'd picked her up. He put his ear to her chest, listening past his own pounding heartbeat. There. Faint. A heartbeat. Slow and weak, but there. "Come on, sweetheart. Come on. Stay with me." He heard sirens. Someone had called it in. Response teams were coming. Thank God for that. Thank God for whoever had called. He kept the children wrapped, kept talking to them, kept praying to any deity that might be listening. The EMTs burst through his broken front door exactly 6 minutes and 40 seconds later. Marcus knew because he'd been counting every second in his head. The responders moved with practiced efficiency, professional and calm on the outside, even though Marcus could see the shock in their eyes when they saw how young the victims were, How serious the situation. One EMT, a woman with kind eyes and quick hands, began checking the little girl's vital signs while her partner worked on the boy. They moved like dancers in a choreographed routine, every action purposeful. "Body temperature?" the female EMT called out. Her partner pulled a specialized thermometer from his kit, took a core reading from the boy. His face went pale. 87.2. Christ, that's severe. The woman checking the girl looked up, her expression grim. 88.6 here. We need active core rewarming. Both of them. Now. They worked quickly, wrapping the children in specialized heating blankets pulled from their medical bags, setting up portable warmers. One of them radioed ahead to the hospital, using medical codes Marcus didn't fully understand, but knew meant life-threatening emergency. As they prepared to load the children onto stretchers, a detective Marcus recognized from his time on the force stepped into his house. Detective Sarah Chen. Sharp mind, good instincts, one of the few who'd sent him a decent retirement card when he'd left the department. Marcus. She took in the scene with quick, assessing eyes. The children, the emergency responders, the broken door, Valor sitting alert and watching everything. What happened here? Marcus told her everything, the words spilling out in a rush. The morning walk, Valor's alert, the abandoned houses and the narrow alley, the children bound and left to die in the snow, the yellow nylon rope, the impossibly tight knots, the frozen hands and blue lips. Finding them just in time, maybe, hopefully. Please God, let it be in time. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes in the small leather notebook she always carried, her expression growing darker and more focused with each detail Marcus provided. Yellow nylon rope, she repeated when he finished. Hands and feet bound, positioned between houses in a condemned neighborhood. She looked at Valor, who sat watching the EMTs load the children into the ambulance. Your dog led you right to them. He's trained for search and rescue, Marcus said. Was trained, still is trained, I guess, even in retirement. Can he track backward? Sarah asked, and Marcus heard the hope in her voice. Find where they came from, where someone took them from? Marcus looked at his partner. Valor's ears were up, alert. His dark eyes were focused and ready, always ready, no matter how many years passed, no matter how many times the department had said he was too old to work. Yes, Marcus said, he can track. But Sarah, I'm not a cop anymore. I don't have authority to participate in an active investigation. No, she agreed. You're a witness, and that dog is the best tracker this city has ever had. Also, Marcus? She paused, made sure he was looking at her. I don't give a damn what some paper-pushing administrator says about age limits. If you and Valor can find where these children came from, can help us catch whoever did this before the trail goes completely cold, then you're damn well going to do it. Please. Marcus knelt beside Valor, running his hand along the dog's broad head, feeling the familiar shape of his partner's skull, the soft fur over powerful muscles. 7 years working together. 7 years of trusting each other with their lives and the lives of everyone they'd searched for. What do you say, boy? One more job? One more search? Valor's tail wagged once, sharp, decisive, absolutely certain. Show me your gear, Sarah said. 10 minutes later, Marcus emerged from his bedroom wearing his old duty belt and gear vest, items he'd kept in the back of his closet like sacred relics. Valor wore his working harness, the dark blue nylon that had been specially fitted to his body years ago and still fit perfectly. The dog stood taller with the harness on, more confident, more focused. This was what he'd been born to do, what he'd been trained for, what made him complete. They returned to the abandoned houses in Sarah's unmarked car, the condemned neighborhood now swarming with police vehicles. Crime scene tape blocked the alley where Marcus had found the children. Techs in white suits were taking photographs, collecting evidence, marking locations with numbered placards. Someone had already found the broken drain pipe, the frozen rope still attached, and bagged it as evidence. Sarah cleared a path through the organized chaos, leading Marcus and Valor to the start of the alley. Officers stepped aside, some of them watching with undisguised curiosity. A few Marcus recognized from his time on the force. They looked surprised to see him here, but no one questioned it. Sarah's authority was absolute when it came to investigative decisions. Marcus gave Valor the familiar command in German, the language K-9 units traditionally used to avoid confusion with normal conversation. Such, finden. Search, find. The dog put his nose down, circled once to orient himself and filter through the competing scents, then moved with absolute purpose back toward the street. But he didn't head toward the main road where they'd come in. Instead, Valor turned sharply down another alley between two different houses on the opposite side of the block. Marcus followed, Sarah and two uniformed officers close behind. Valor moved steadily through the snow, pausing occasionally to verify the scent trail, then pushing forward with renewed confidence. The dog knew what he was doing. He'd done it hundreds of times before. They emerged onto a side street Marcus didn't recognize, had never walked down in all his morning routes through this neighborhood. Valor paused at a storm drain, sniffed thoroughly, then dismissed it and moved on. 2 blocks, 3. The condemned neighborhood began to transition into occupied homes, houses where lights were starting to flicker on as residents prepared for their day. Valor stopped at a small ranch-style house, white with blue trim. The yard was neat despite the heavy snow. Someone had actually shoveled a path from the driveway to the front door. A dark blue sedan sat in the driveway, covered in fresh snow. Christmas lights still hung from the eaves, dormant but neat, waiting for someone to take them down. It looked like a normal house, a normal family home, the kind of place where nothing terrible could possibly happen. Marcus knew better. 25 years as a cop had taught him that terrible things happened in normal-looking places more often than anyone wanted to believe. Valor sat at the end of the driveway, assuming his formal alert position. Found. This was the place. This was where the trail led. Sarah radioed for backup, approaching the front door with her hand resting on her service weapon. Marcus kept Valor back, watching. His heart pounded against his ribs. This wasn't his job anymore. He was just here with his dog, just a witness, just a retired cop who'd found something terrible and was trying to help. Sarah knocked on the door, professional and controlled, waited, knocked again, louder and more insistent. "Police, open the door, please." Movement inside, footsteps, a man's voice muffled by the door. "Just a minute, hold on." The door opened. A man in his mid-30s stood in the entrance, disheveled hair, red-rimmed eyes, wearing a bathrobe over pajamas. Behind him, partially visible, a woman appeared. Younger than the man, maybe late 20s, nervous energy radiating from every movement. "Is there a problem, officer?" The man's voice carried confusion and concern, but not guilt, not fear. Genuine confusion. Sarah showed him her badge, then pulled up a photograph on her phone. The crime scene, the yellow nylon rope around the drain pipe. "Do you recognize this rope, sir?" The man's face went white as bone. The woman behind him gasped, one hand flying to her mouth. "That's..." The man's voice shook. "That's from our garage. We had a break-in last week. Someone took tools, rope from our garage. We filed a police report. Officer Wilson took the report. You can check." "What break-in?" Sarah's voice remained level, professional, giving nothing away. "Tuesday night. Last Tuesday. We came home from dinner and found the garage door standing open. The side door had been forced. Someone took rope, a hammer, some other tools. Nothing expensive enough to bother with insurance. The man pulled his phone from his bathrobe pocket with shaking hands. I have photos. I documented everything for the police report. He showed Sarah his phone. She examined the photos, her expression unreadable. Marcus couldn't see the screen from where he stood, but he watched Sarah's body language, the way her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Mr. Sarah prompted. "Hendricks. David Hendricks. This is my wife, Laura. What is this about? Those missing kids?" His voice rose. "Oh, God. Is this about those missing kids? The Amber Alert?" "What missing kids?" Sarah asked, though Marcus could tell from her tone that she already knew. She was testing Hendricks, watching his reactions. "The Peterson twins. Emma and Noah. It's been all over the news since 3 this morning. Someone took them from their bedroom while their parents were sleeping. The parents didn't even know until they went to wake them up for school." Hendricks pulled up his phone again, showed Sarah the Amber Alert. "Same rope? Someone used our rope on those kids?" Sarah looked at the alert. Marcus moved closer, trying to see. Sarah angled the phone toward him. Emma and Noah Peterson, 5-year-old twins, taken from their home at an address Marcus knew was 12 miles from here, abducted sometime between midnight and 2:47 in the morning. The alert had gone out at 2:47 when their mother found their beds empty and called 911. Someone had planned this, stolen rope a week ago, planned the abduction, planned the location to leave the children, planned everything with cold, methodical precision. "We need to search your property," Sarah said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Your house, your garage, everything. Do we need a warrant, or will you consent?" "Consent," both Hendricks said simultaneously. "Whatever you need, please. If our rope was used to hurt those kids, we want to help." Over the next hour, the house and garage were thoroughly searched. In the garage, they found more yellow nylon rope on a shelf. The same brand, the same thickness. The kind of common rope you could buy at any hardware store in the country, impossible to trace without unusual markings. One of the crime scene techs found fresh tire tracks in the alley behind the house, partially filled with new snow, but still clearly visible. Someone had been here recently, parked, done something, left. Valor pulled toward the tracks, his nose working. Marcus gave him slack on the lead, let him follow the scent. The dog tracked down the alley, around a corner, to where the tracks disappeared onto a main street that had been plowed and salted overnight. Gone. The trail ended there. But Valor wasn't finished. He circled back, working another scent, something different. He led Marcus to a large dumpster 3 houses down, from the Hendricks residence. Sarah joined them as Marcus lifted the heavy lid. Inside, buried under black trash bags that someone had thrown in to conceal them, were 2 small winter coats. Blue and pink. Marcus could see the tags still attached to the collars, could read the names written in permanent marker on the labels. Emma Peterson. Noah Peterson. "He took their coats," Marcus said quietly, rage making his voice tight and controlled. "Took them from their home, stripped them down to pajamas, took their coats so they'd freeze faster, left them to die in the cold." Sarah's jaw was so tight Marcus could see the muscles standing out. She called for evidence techs, had them photograph and bag the coats. Her phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression hardening even further. "Hospital?" she asked into the phone. Listened more. "Both of them? Stable?" A pause. "Good, that's good. Keep them guarded. I'm sending uniformed officers now." She ended the call, looked at Marcus. "The children are stable, critical but stable. They're warming them slowly, watching for cardiac events. Doctors are cautiously optimistic." Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. Stable. Not out of danger, but stable. Fighting. Still alive. Thank God. We need to find who did this, Sarah said, before they try again, or run. Marcus, can Valor do anything more with this trail? Marcus looked at his partner. The dog sat patiently, waiting for direction. But the trail was cold, contaminated by plows and salt and other vehicles. Even the best tracking dog couldn't follow a scent that didn't exist anymore. No, Marcus admitted. The trail's gone. But Sarah, we have the coats, we have the rope, we have evidence. Someone planned this, someone local enough to case the Hendricks garage, someone who knew this condemned neighborhood well enough to know those houses would be empty, knew where to hide victims. Local suspect, Sarah agreed. Someone who's been watching the Peterson family, someone obsessed or angry enough to plan an abduction this carefully. She made notes. I'll have detectives pull all video from this neighborhood, every doorbell camera, every traffic camera, every business security feed for the past week. If someone drove through here, we'll find them. Over the next 4 hours, the investigation moved with the focused intensity of a major case. Detectives worked backward through security camera footage, building a timeline. They found a dark SUV that appeared on 3 different doorbell cameras between 3:15 and 3:30 in the morning, the same time frame when the Peterson children were taken. The vehicle drove slowly, deliberately, like someone who knew where they were going. They got a partial license plate from 2 of the cameras, ran it through the system, found the vehicle had been reported stolen 2 days ago from a grocery store parking lot in a neighboring city. They found the SUV abandoned in that same grocery store parking lot, left there like the criminal had planned a loop, stealing it from one spot and returning it to the same location. Inside, forensic techs found fibers matching the children's pajamas, a partial fingerprint on the steering wheel, hair samples, DNA evidence that would take time to process but would eventually provide answers. By noon, they had a suspect, Robert James Kellerman, 37 years old, previous conviction for child endangerment in another state 4 years ago. Had been living in a cheap motel 6 miles from the Peterson home for the past 2 months. When detectives raided his motel room, they found photographs of the Peterson house printed from Google Maps satellite view. Photos of the children's bedroom window taken with a telephoto lens. Handwritten notes about the parents' schedule, when they went to work, when they came home, when the lights in the children's room went out. He'd been planning this for weeks, watching, waiting, choosing his moment. They arrested Kellerman at a gas station 50 miles away, trying to cross into the next state. When they searched his car, they found rope fibers that matched the rope from the Hendricks garage. His shoes matched distinctive boot prints found in the snow near where the children had been abandoned. His DNA would eventually match evidence from the stolen SUV. But the strongest evidence, the proof that had started everything, was what Valor had found. The trail from the crime scene to the Hendricks house. The dumpster with the coats. The connection that had given police a starting point, a direction to investigate. Without that, Kellerman might have made it across state lines, might have disappeared, might have gotten away with attempted murder. Marcus sat in the hospital waiting room that evening, Valor lying at his feet. The dog's head rested on his paws, exhausted from the long day but still alert, still aware of every person who walked past. They'd been here for 7 hours, waiting for news, waiting to know if Emma and Noah Peterson would survive. Detective Chen found them there. She looked exhausted, her usually neat appearance rumpled, her eyes red-rimmed from too much coffee and not enough sleep. But she was smiling. Actually smiling. "They're going to make it," Sarah said, dropping into the chair beside Marcus like her legs had given out. "Both of them. Core temperature was 87 and 88 when they arrived. But you got them here fast enough. You kept them from warming too quickly. You did everything right, Marcus." "Valor did everything right," Marcus corrected. "I just followed my partner." "Your partner who's supposedly too old to work?" Sarah's voice carried acid sarcasm. "Your partner who the department said should be retired." They sat in silence for a moment, both watching Valor breathe slowly, peacefully, a dog who'd done his job and done it perfectly. The doctors say another hour in that cold, and the children would have died, Sarah continued quietly. Their organs were starting to fail. Another 30 minutes, maybe 45, and there would have been nothing anyone could do. She paused. You saved their lives. You and Valor. What about Kellerman? Lawyer up immediately, hasn't said a word. Doesn't matter. We have him cold. She smiled grimly at her own unintentional pun. Attempted murder, kidnapping, child endangerment. The DA is talking about terrorism charges too, given the planning and premeditation. He'll never see daylight again. Why did he do it? Sarah pulled out her notebook, flipped through pages covered in her neat handwriting. Best we can figure from his computer and notes, he's been stalking the mother, Melissa Peterson, for months. Met her at her workplace, became fixated on her. When she rejected his advances, reported him to building security, got a restraining order, he decided to punish her by taking what she loved most. She closed the notebook. He left those children there to die slowly, to suffer. He wanted their mother to know what happened, wanted her to spend the rest of her life knowing her children died afraid and in pain. Marcus reached down, ran his hand along Valor's head. The dog's tail thumped once against the hospital floor. But they didn't die. No, because you walk your dog through condemned neighborhoods at 6 a.m, because Valor still has the best nose in the state, because you both refuse to actually retire just because someone signed paperwork saying you should. Sarah pulled a business card from her pocket. The department made a mistake letting you go. You still have years of work left in you. We have a civilian search and rescue program, contract work. You and Valor would be perfect for it. Marcus took the card, looked at it. Civilian Search and Rescue Division. Phone number, email address, an offer to matter again, to work again, to be useful. I'll think about it, he said. The waiting room doors opened. A woman rushed through, her face streaked with tears, her hair disheveled. Behind her came a man, equally distraught, both of them looking like they'd aged 10 years in a single day. The Petersons. Someone must have called them with news that their children were stable enough for visitors. Where are they? Where are my babies? Melissa Peterson's voice cracked on the words. A nurse appeared, professional and calm, the kind of calm that came from years of dealing with family emergencies. This way, please. They're in the ICU. They're stable. They're warming. They're going to be okay. As the Petersons followed the nurse toward the intensive care unit, Melissa Peterson stopped, looked at Marcus. Someone must have told her. Someone must have explained who had found her children. You're the one, she said. The police said you found them. You and your dog. Marcus stood out of respect. My partner found them, ma'am. I just followed. She looked down at Valor, and her face crumpled. She dropped to her knees on the hospital floor, and the dog stood to meet her. She wrapped her arms around Valor's neck, pressed her face into his fur, and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place of terror and relief and gratitude, too big for words. Thank you, she whispered into Valor's fur. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Valor stood perfectly still, the way he'd been trained to do with victims and their families. Patient, steady, a rock in the storm of human emotion. David Peterson put his hand on Marcus's shoulder, his own eyes streaming tears. How can we ever repay you? You gave us our children back. You gave us our life back. No repayment needed. Take care of those kids. That's enough. Can we see him again? Melissa asked, still kneeling beside Valor. After? When Emma and Noah are better? They should know who saved them. They should meet him. Marcus hesitated. Valor wasn't really his anymore, not in the way most people owned dogs. The dog belonged to his work, to the calling he was born for. Keeping him in retirement, walking him through quiet neighborhoods, it had been kind, but it hadn't been fair. Valor needed to work, needed to search, needed to save. "Yes," Marcus said finally. "When they're ready. When the doctors say it's okay. Valor would like to see them too." The Petersons went to their children. Sarah stayed with Marcus, both of them watching through the glass walls as the parents entered the ICU, saw their children alive, breathing, saved. "You're going to call me," Sarah said. It wasn't a question. Marcus looked at the card in his hand. Civilian search and rescue. A chance to work again. To matter again. To use the skills he'd spent decades developing. The partnership he'd built with the best tracking dog he'd ever known. "Yeah," he said. "I'll call." "Good, because we have a missing hiker up in the state forest. Been gone 3 days. Temperatures dropping tonight. Could use a good tracking team." Marcus smiled. Valor's tail wagged at the change in Marcus's posture, the shift in his energy that meant work might be coming. The dog understood more than most people gave him credit for. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. I'll text you the coordinates." 2 weeks later, Marcus stood outside the Peterson home, the card Sarah had given him now worn from being carried in his wallet. He'd called her the day after the hospital, had taken the contract job with the Civilian Search and Rescue Division. They'd already worked 2 searches in those 2 weeks. Found the hiker in the state forest, hypothermic but alive. Located an elderly man with dementia who'd wandered from his care facility. Each search had been successful. Each time, Valor had done what he was born to do. The door opened. Melissa Peterson stood there, smiling though her eyes still held shadows that might never fully fade. Some terrors left permanent marks. "Come in, please. The kids are so excited to meet him properly." Valor walked beside Marcus into the living room. Emma and Noah sat on the couch, wrapped in blankets despite the warm house. They looked smaller than Marcus remembered, more fragile. But their eyes were bright, alive, focused. Emma saw Valor first. "The doggy," she said, her voice stronger than Marcus had dared hope. "Mama said you found us." Marcus let Valor approach slowly, giving the children control over the interaction. Some kids who'd been through trauma were afraid of dogs, even friendly ones. But Emma reached out without hesitation, her small hand gentle on Valor's head. "You're warm," she said. "I remember warm. When I was cold, something was warm." "That was Valor," Marcus said softly. "He stayed with you, kept you warm until the ambulance came." Noah scooted forward on the couch, reaching out to pet Valor's back. "Good doggy, best doggy in the world." Valor's tail wagged, his eyes soft. This was why he worked. Not for recognition or medals, for this. For small hands petting his head. For children who got to grow up because he'd been there when they needed him. They stayed for an hour, the Petersons telling Marcus how the community had rallied around them. How neighbors had organized meals and support, how people had donated to the hospital fund, how the city had come together in the wake of something terrible to prove that goodness still existed. As they prepared to leave, David Peterson pressed an envelope into Marcus's hand. "We wanted to do something. Set up a fund for search and rescue dogs, training, equipment, veterinary care, in Valor's name." Marcus tried to give it back. "That's not necessary." "It is," Melissa insisted. "Other families need what you gave us. Hope, a second chance. There should be more teams like you and Valor. This fund will help make that happen." "Other families need people like you," David added, "who refuse to quit, who still care enough to act when something's wrong." That evening, Marcus sat in his living room, Valor beside him on the couch where the dog wasn't technically supposed to sit, but had been sitting for years anyway. On the coffee table sat the envelope from the Petersons, Sarah's worn business card, and the new contract with the Civilian Search and Rescue Division. His phone rang. Sarah. "Got another one," she said, and Marcus could hear the urgency in her voice. 12-year-old girl, missing from a campsite in the mountains. 4 hours gone, temperatures dropping. They need valor. Marcus looked at his partner. The dog looked back, ears already up, sensing something important in Marcus's change in posture, in the tone of Sarah's voice coming through the phone speaker. "We're 15 minutes out," Marcus said. "See you there." Marcus grabbed Valor's work harness, the dog standing immediately, knowing what that harness meant. Work, purpose, lives to save. Valor pushed his head through the straps, stood taller, more focused, transformed from retired pet to working search and rescue dog in seconds. "Let's go, boy. Someone needs us." They headed for the door, into the night, into the cold, into the search, where they belonged, where they'd always belonged. Because some things never retire. Courage doesn't retire. Loyalty doesn't retire. The instinct to help those who can't help themselves, that never retires. The bond between a handler and his partner, the trust built over years of working together, that never expires just because someone signs a piece of paper. And as long as there were people lost in the cold, as long as there were children who needed finding, as long as there was hope to give and lives to save, Marcus and Valor would be there, ready, capable, unstoppable. One last search, and then another, and another after that, for as long as they both could run.